Greetings everyone, my name is Greg. In this video I am going to be talking about how Christian apologetics is a con game. Christian apologists are con artists. And there's no better example of this than Frank Turek. Because one of the things I'm going to start off with, because this was brought to my attention yesterday by a friend of mine that had said about the dishonest nature of Frank Turek's argument. And this is dealing with the hell subject, but it's not just, this doesn't just deal with hell. This cuts at the heart of what is Christianity. Here is...
Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologists. We interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to
credible answers.
questions.
Frank, I think it would be helpful for our audience. I know it was for me when I was in Bible college and seminary, learning how to understand hermeneutics, the science to understand the Bible, and in particular as it relates to metaphor, because I really do think we can paint an inaccurate picture of God if we're ultra wooden in our interpretations. And as it relates to the afterlife, and in hell in particular, we see certain metaphorical language.
The idea that it's a metaphor and that there are metaphors in the Bible, you have to be able to show that. You have to be able to demonstrate that something is a metaphor in the text. Like the idea of a multi-headed beast. Okay, that's a metaphor. That's obviously a metaphor, because there is no such thing. If a Christian would try to say that there is actually, literally, a multi-headed beast, then they're clearly delusional, because there is no such thing. Doesn't exist. The thing is, to try and say something like hell is a metaphor. Metaphor for what? But he'll get into that. But the aspect, credible answers. Credible to who? If you're going to say credible, you have to have some way of validating your claim. You can't just assert something without evidence and say, it's a credible answer because I said it. No, it's not. Just because you say something doesn't mean it's credible. You can say bullshit all day long. It is still bullshit. But to let this continue.
How do we understand metaphors when we're reading the Bible?
Yeah, it's difficult sometimes to figure it out, just like any text. You know, is this person trying to communicate something literal, or is this person trying to communicate something literal through a metaphor? Because the metaphor is always trying to communicate some literal truth, just not in a literal way. When I read and you read in the Bible, Jesus is the door, we know it means the way. We don't think he has hinges.
The idea of Jesus being the door, I'm going to pull up because I don't believe him. I don't believe that was ever said. No. How about and let's go exact phrase. It is okay. John 10:7 and 10:9. So let's just... I am the door of the sheep. I am the door. By me any man enter in, he shall be saved, and go in and out and find pasture. Bullshit. And I call flat out bullshit on that because of Psalms 49 verse 7. None of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give God a ransom for him. This idea of all you have to do is believe or think someone died for you, that doesn't work. That is completely against everything that is in the Torah, Tanakh, or Old Testament. Everything. It undermines everything that was stated by the God. It can even be pointed out. Christians love Ezekiel 18:20 because it has the soul that sinneth it shall die. But in verse 21, and I find it interesting that it does say, the Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father, neither shall the Father the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. Where is that even hinting at the idea that somebody can pay the price for you? I contend it's not. It is saying the exact opposite, that the iniquity or sin of one will not be passed on to another. So you can't, it is dishonest to the core for Christians to try and say that everyone was damned because of the actions of Adam and Eve, because that goes against, right here, the Father shall not bear the iniquity of the Son, neither shall the Son bear the iniquity of the Father. That debunks the idea that everyone is born a sinner. Everyone is because, and to address this idea of sin real quick, the only ones that have to obey the, to use the term, 10 Commandments are Jews. Because they are 10 out of the 613 laws given to the Jews. There are the laws of Noah that were given, that Mark and I had talked about in the live interview I did with him. Those would be what would be for everybody type of thing. Not the 10 Commandments. There's only about 8 in the laws of Noah. But the 10 Commandments and this whole notion of sin is Jewish. If you're not Jewish, you can't, to use the term, be a sinner. But what I'm really getting at with this is verse 21. But if the wicked will turn from all the sins that he hath committed, keep my statutes, and do what is lawful and right, he shall surely live, he shall not die. No mention of a scapegoat. No mention of anyone needing to die for you. In fact, it is made very clear you have to turn from the behavior that you did, obey the laws, keep the statutes, all that happy shit, do what is lawful and right. Where does that say Jesus? Where does that say you need a Savior? Because I would also add, for all you Christians out there, Isaiah 43, verse 11. And this is not Jesus. This is the Jewish God. even I am the Lord. Beside me there is no Savior. And if you go back one chapter, Isaiah 42:8, I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Point blank, the God of the Old Testament would not go for people worshiping Jesus. That would be blasphemy and idolatry. And the idea of Jesus being God, it is something that is a common lie. And it is one that I will hit these people like Frank Turek with, and they do not have an answer for it. God, Numbers 23:19. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man. Let's put aside the fact that the God sends a lying spirit and all that happy shit. Just the idea that this God is not a man or the son of a man. That eliminates Jesus right there. But one more thing that I want to touch on before going back to this bullshit of a metaphor is Christianity is based on a misunderstanding of Hebrew. Because what they look at is Isaiah 7:14. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. They want to try and act like that's Jesus and that this is some kind of immaculate conception. This is showing that they do not understand Hebrew, because the word virgin is, and let me just enlarge this so you can see this too. This Hebrew word is alma, and it means a lass, a damsel, a maid. Now it does have virgin, but that is just inaccurate. Because to see the other use of virgin is, okay, let me, and when you're looking something up, if you want to have it in the KJV Plus, you have to search for it on that. And you can see, there we go. And this is interesting that Genesis 24:16 has the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin. But yet, when you look up that word, you notice it is a completely different Hebrew word. And that it means a virgin. That is the, I love it, the city or state of, the state of virginity. And a bride also, this is the sexual virgin. An alma is a young woman. A young woman giving birth is not a miracle. Young women give birth every fucking day. It's not a miracle. So what it comes down to is Christianity is founded on misunderstanding Hebrew. And apologists are taught how to twist the Bible to try and make up excuses for why their dogma doesn't work, why their claims don't work. But to let this continue.
Or a doorknob, right? And so, as we said earlier, when we're looking at these issues related to hell, we're looking at fire on one hand and outer darkness on the other. They would seem to be contradictory, because how are you going to have outer darkness and fire at the same time? Fire gives light. It seems to communicate destruction. Also, we're talking about beings, Satan and demons, that are immaterial. How would fire affect an immaterial being? It wouldn't. But it would affect an immaterial being if it meant to be separated from the only source of goodness, or the ultimate source of goodness, and that is God. That's literally what hell is.
That is literally bullshit. Frank Turek, so you're saying God is not omnipresent? Let's just be clear, Frank Turek, apologists. You can't have this idea of hell is separation from God and not strip your God of being omnipresent, as well as omnibenevolent, omnipotent. All of the omnis have to go out the window, because the God has to be incapable of stopping, to use the term, evil, because of the idea like free will and so forth. So we can make choices that this God can't do. It can't do anything about my choices. all it can do is be a tyrant. And the idea of it's separation from God, then God's not everywhere. You can't have separation from something that is everywhere. On this planet, above water at least, oxygen is everywhere. That means there's nowhere that it's not. And if you're going to have something that there's nowhere that it's not, you can't have an area that is separate from that which is everywhere, because if it's everywhere, there's nowhere that it's separate from. These two things are in stark contrast. But Frank Turek also, he's a dishonest little troll. And the debate with Christopher Hitchens tore him apart. But he let him have more leeway than I would have.
I think the second one is more persuasive than the
But
Is wrong.
Will that do?
Christians or religious people, religion is trying to find out how the universe began, and so is science. They're not.
No, religion says it does know. Excuse me.
It's trying
Religion is
to
not a
find it.
process of scientific inquiry. Religion is an affirmation of faith. It
I
says
am
it
a
already
religious
knows.
person, Christopher,
It
and
says
I am
it already
using
knows.
evidence to try and point out that the universe exploded into being out of nothing.
And you have some.
that is not evidence of a God. Note, everybody, this debate that he was in is, does God exist? But his argument for God existing is that does not prove a God. Even if it would show and it doesn't show a deistic God. It doesn't show any God. But the best thing that what he could try and argue for is deism. You cannot have, if you're a theist that is trying to argue for a theist God, you cannot use deism. Deism does not get you to theism. It is dishonest to the core. But Frank Turek it's even worse with him.
Scientific evidence for the view that an intervention will occur to prevent the implosion. And
No,
that
forget
will
that.
provide-
Let's start at the beginning.
I can't forget it.
Let's start at the beginning.
It's
That's for
the only
debate
thing, It's the
two.
only thing you said all evening that I'm going to remember.
Gentlemen,
That's for debate two.
No. I mean, don't say. Look, do yourself and your faith the honor of saying it's faith. Don't say it's science-based.
The argument
you
would
won't
be,
get away with it.
look, the argument would be, Christopher, is that if the universe exploded into being out of nothing, then miracles are possible because the greatest miracle of all has already occurred. The question is, have miracles occurred in the first
No, because a
century?
miracle-
That requires another debate
A
whereby
miracle
we
is
have
a-
to look at the historical evidence and see. And if it is true that that Jesus really did come and say and do the things that the New Testament writer said he did, then whatever he teaches is true, because if he rose from the dead, he was God. If he taught that there will be an intervention, then there will be. That's the argument. I don't have time to support it.
That is bullshit. Frank Turek, if you make an argument, you have to support it. That's the point. You don't just get to make up and say that this is the way it is because you say it. No, you have to support what you're saying. What you're saying has to be supported. The debate here was, does God exist? But what you're trying to use is deism. You're trying to ride the coattails of deism, much like Christianity tries to ride the coattails of Judaism. There is nothing original about Christianity. There is nothing honest in what Frank Turek is doing. And I would say all apologists. Because anyone that tries to use the idea of a Big Bang being evidence for a God is they're purely lying. And to try and say about Jesus, I've already shown you, Jesus is not God. The aspect of the virgin birth is a misunderstanding of Hebrew. The idea of the Messiah was to be here as a savior is also a misunderstanding of Hebrew. What it comes down to is these people do not understand the Hebrew of and the message of Judaism. Instead, what they're doing is they're trying to find ways to make excuses for the bullshit that they say they believe. This is dishonest. At its very core, this is dishonest. You cannot, like Frank Turek, you cannot say hell is separation from God and not rip apart the idea of God being omnipresent. You have to make a choice, Frank Turek. Is hell separation from God, or is God omnipresent? Because if you take away these omnis, what you're doing is you're making your God weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. To try and say, as he does, that basically a design needs a designer. Intelligence requires a greater intelligence. We're intelligent, so it requires a God to have engineered us. All right, this God, whatever it would have to be at least as complex and so forth as we are. So, by Frank's and these apologists' own standard, this God is so complex, it needs a creator. Who made God? You can't say that the God made itself, because that flies in the face of the apologetic argument. And you can't say that this God came out of nothing because, as the apologists say, you can't get something from nothing. Whatever this God would be, it would have to be something. Where did it come from? Can't come from nothing, so you need a God to have created that. But that needs a God to have created that. And that creates an infinite regression fallacy. And the big thing that Frank Turek and these apologists utilize is logical fallacy after logical fallacy. Be it the argument from ignorance, we don't know X, so that means God. No, it doesn't. If you don't know how something happened, you can't say what it was. Like the aspect in my 20s, I had what is termed missing time. I don't have an explanation. It is just as much an argument from ignorance to say, I don't know, so alien abduction, or I don't know, so God. It's the same thing. It is the exact same type argument. And to use it in another way, the aspect of, like, if a woman is raped, the aspect and not knowing who the rapist was, the aspect of, we don't know who it was, so that means it was this person. Why? Well, you just said you don't know who it was. How can you then say that it has to be this person? That contradicts your we don't know who. So if you don't know who, you don't know who. If you don't know how something happened, that's it. Conversation done. You can't say that you can't insert something when you start your premise with, I don't know. There can't be a but. It's, I don't know. There's also a dishonest aspect that I deal with and I see with Christians, is this idea of agnostic being separate from atheist. No. Agnostic deals with what you know, or to use the term, don't know or think can't know. Theist and atheist deal with belief and disbelief. That's it. One of the things Frank Turek had done in this debate was he tried saying the atheistic position for different things like the creation of the universe and so forth. None of that has a goddamn thing to do with atheism. None. So it's one, there can be a secular answer, fine. There can be a humanist answer, fine. An atheist, no. Atheism is simply the disbelief in the claims that theists make regarding a God. Frank Turek had also said that it takes more faith to be an atheist. No, it takes no faith. Because it doesn't take faith to say, I don't believe you, or I don't believe your claims. That is not a faith position. That is a position of, I do not believe you. You have not sufficiently proven your case. That doesn't mean that I have any faith at all. It means you have not met your burden. Till you meet your burden of proof, I don't have to believe you because you haven't met your burden of proof. This is why apologetics at its very heart is set up on being dishonest. It's just how it is. And I can show it over and over and over again. Not to mention, their premise is rooted in ignorance, be it ignorance of Hebrew or ignorance of their own Bible. And the other problem I have with these people, and it's something I deal with Christians on a constant basis, is you show them something in the Bible and they'll be, well, it really means this or that. Based on what? Like I said at the start of this, just because you say something doesn't mean it's a credible answer. Just because you can pull a bullshit excuse out of your ass does not mean you are sufficiently answering the question or that you're even accurately answering a question. No. You're making up excuses. You're grasping at straws. Because if you have an actual answer, you will have actual proof. Otherwise, it's actually just a bunch of bullshit. The thing is, I have no time for apologists, but I would debate someone like Frank Turek and tear him apart. Because the truth of the matter is, Jesus was nothing. Jesus failed to fulfill the criteria for Messiah from his birth. Because the Messiah had to be born of a Jewish mother and Jewish father. Because the tribal affiliation in Judaism is passed on by the father, not by adoption either. There are two words in Hebrew. One is for an offspring, a ben, and a follower is a zera. I hope I have those right, or not the... A ben, I think a ben is the biological child, whereas a zera is a follower. And someone that is your follower can never be your biological child. But someone that was your biological child could also be your follower. The thing is, you have to understand and you have to know what Hebrew term is being talked about at a given point. And this is another area where Christians show they either don't know Hebrew or they're intentionally twisting it to fit their narrative, which means they're being dishonest. So, no matter what, I have said it in other videos and I'll say it again. Because it was mentioned in a question of if it would be proven that the God of the Bible is true, would you become a Christian? No. Point blank, no. Because if the God of the Bible is true, I would have to seriously consider Judaism, not Christianity. Because Christianity is false. Because if the God of the Bible, if the God of the Bible is true, Christianity is false. If the God of the Bible is not true, Christianity is false. Either way, Christianity is false. There's no way around it. Christianity tries to ride the coattails of Judaism, but if Judaism is not true, Christianity is not true. If Judaism is true, Christianity is not, because it's Judaism. Christianity makes a major shift from Judaism and goes against what is clearly pointed out in Judaism. So much so that if that God would exist, it would be outraged at the Christian ideas and the Christian philosophy of all you have to do is think something and it's washed away. The raped woman remains raped. The molested child remains molested. The murdered person remains dead. Why should the person that perpetrated that get away with their actions scot-free just because they say they think something? That's immoral. To try and act like you care about morals or justice. Frank Turek, no you don't. None of you apologists do. All you're looking for is what kind of excuse can you come up with so that your cult can keep bringing in the money. Because that's all you care about. Let's be real. All you people care about, Christians, apologists, all you care about is keeping the money flowing in. That's all you care about. Christianity is big business. That's what it's about. It's not about a God. It's about the Benjamins. And atheists like me are here to rub your nose in the fact you're only looking at the money. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Later, people.